Um. So, other things, I was able to do. So, like, one thing I've been wondering about. We've been talking about, like, some of the Marvel movie fatigue and such recently, and I to the point where I remember I didn't go see Blood and Thunder. Um,
I also did not do that. I didn't see Multiverse of Madness.
I
I
saw
didn't see
Multiverse of
She-Hulk.
Madness. I started to feel the Marvel fatigue on that. Blood and Thunder. I remember a lot of people coming in saying that like they didn't like it, and that the they felt the fatigue real heavy on that. Excuse me, not Blood and Thunder. Love and Thunder. My mistake.
That would have been a fun name too.
Um, and so I watched it on the plane. Because I was like, okay, time to kill. And you know what? Like going in, especially hearing like how much I heard a lot of negativity going in. I thought it was all right. I was like, that was entertaining. It kind of is like basically Ragnarok Part 2 in its
Hmm.
vibes and tone, and I feel like Taika Waititi still knows how to make a fun movie, you know. Um, and like I've enjoyed everything that I've seen him put out so far. And it's one of those bits where I'm like, okay, this is definitely still full of his flavor. But yeah, I thought it was totally fine, you know? I don't know what I necessarily expected. Maybe I went in with like very, very low expectations based on what I kind of heard of it. And, whenever things did like land, I was
I
like,
heard
oh,
people say it was like the of
yeah.
all the Marvel films.
So did I. Like, I'm just thinking of a lot of that. And so I guess like I went in with like expectations on the floor. And I was like, no, that was fine. That was totally fine. I think that like Taika, is gonna like I can see the parts of it where it's almost like, and I don't know this for sure. I'm just like obviously fucking just guessing, but I feel as if there
Mhm.
are moments where it's like, okay, this is where like the typical action Marvel scene has to play out. So then he goes like, how do we add this thing to it to make it a little more fun than normal, even though it
Mhm.
has to play out, you know? Um,
Yeah,
how can we add like one goofy element or two to some of these sequences to make it kind of like be a little bit just not the same thing that we always get, you know? I feel like Deadpool kind of did that a bunch of times too, you know? It
yeah.
was just like it's like it's still an action movie. It's still doing all those bits, but then it kind of is just like let's try to mix up the superhero formula just a little bit. But
I
again,
think, like, as somebody who has not watched the recent, I want to Phase 5 stuff.
mhm.
Um, I feel like the fatigue started to kick in right after Loki. Like everyone says it's after Endgame, but like people watched Loki and seemed very positive about Loki. And I feel like it's two different things. One is like the incessant punch up dialogue, like at the absolute mandatory, like 180 seconds have passed, you must make a snarky comment.
Yeah,
Like
there's that.
is now out of control. Like
Hmm.
it's totally out of control.
There is that. There is the attempt to. So it's interesting. There's a couple scenes here. Well, notably like one or two really, but there's a couple moments in this where they're doing like the kind of like the punch up dialogue over a serious thing.
Hmm.
Uh, like okay, there's like joke into serious,
Hmm.
like into like joking while serious kind of tone, you know?
Hmm.
So they go for like a kind of like a third thing on that. But there's also moments of like, there's a literal, he's right behind me, isn't he? There's an actual
Yeah.
one of those in it where you're like, and there it is, you know? Like they quite literally did it. I do remember too as well. Yeah, Moon Knight, right? You guys said good things about Moon Knight. Haven't seen that yet.
Most
Um,
positive thing about Moon Knight is that lots of it is super weird.
You got to get super weird and different at this point for sure. Um, but yeah. Anyway, I do
Uh,
think.
Before I will say there were two things. One is the dialogue thing. The second of which is we are like 31, 32 movies in that almost all have the same third act almost entirely.
Right. So this is where,
I,
regardless of what how charming the flavor can be, if the core meal is still the same ingredients, you're gonna need to do something. And this is what I felt on with Doctor Strange as well, where you're like, even if the moment to moment there's these things where like, okay, that's cool, okay, not really that, but that was all right, ooh, that's interesting, but you kind of walk away going, the overall feeling has just been the same.
It's I remember for many 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 years there was a sentiment that you would like mention, and it hit you first, and then it started to hit me later, where you're like watching a video game trailer and you're like, oh wow, they're exploring, oh this is an interesting concept, oh what's gonna happen, and they go okay, and then they crouch down and pull out a fucking gun and start doing third person shooting, and you're like, oh, it's a fucking third person shooter. Like WandaVision was really interesting until they decided they had to have a big magic battle between a superhero and a supervillain, and then your brain just fucking shut the fuck off.
So this is where we get to, like, I guess the part of it where you're like, okay, how far can we get from what a superhero comic book is? If you get really, really far from that, you're definitely going to pique my interest, right? And the premise of WandaVision early on, especially with just like the reality and the twists and turns of the genre being played with and all that, are fun and interesting things to explore. But knowing that you're always going to have to come back to a climactic super comic CG battle is like, it's like I hope they can find a way to, I don't predict it, because I imagine that like this is kind of what people expect a movie to just be. But it would be nice if there was like, more breaking away, not just in the premise and the setup, but in the entire thing being like, no, the whole genre is different, and this is a different kind of story with these characters, exploring this world. It doesn't have to have like the same kind of villain with the same kind of conclusion. That being said, Christian Bale did a phenomenal job in this as well. Like, I think it's one of those things where I'm like, okay, I can see him looking at the script and going like, because Christian Bale deciding to get involved in this kind of story to begin with, like, I'm going to be the villain of like Thor 4 is a very not Christian Bale role to take,
Yeah, and when he was doing interviews, they're like, how do you feel about being part of the Marvel MCU canon?
Like,
and he's like, I'm not part of, I'm playing the character in the movie.
It's such a not him thing to do, to come in this way, But I can see, from the way he played it and from the way it was done, that it's like, oh, you played a really interesting role. You did a good job of it. And the worst thing about it was that he should have been in it more. And he should have said more things. He should have done more things, because I was genuinely curious what he as a villain had to say about, what he was doing and why, and all that stuff. Because it's one of those things where you're like, yeah, no, like, it's one of those cases of just like pretty justified villain, And whenever you get one of those bits, you're like, okay, let's hear more, let's see more, and he did a good job of it. So it does kind of suck, unfortunately, that like he was kind of underused. But that's another kind of thing to it, where it's like, oh, I went in just kind of, I didn't expect anything of whatever that was going to be, and he was fine too. So yeah, all in all, better than I expected, not bad. Definitely though, like, can't just pull another one of these out, like to make it. I'm gonna call this Ragnarok 2, and Ragnarok 3. You'd have to just make it something,
man. Don't worry, they totally will.
I don't know.
They will just.
I hope my hope is that like, the people that they get, the showrunners and the directors and the script writers, I hope they're all getting bored of the formula too. That's the best thing that could happen here at this point, is that the people making it creatively.
It doesn't matter. So for Marvel specifically, it doesn't matter because Kevin Feige is not tired of it. And Kevin Feige gets the final say on like literally every single
Oh,
part of every production.
definitely not tired of making money on it. That's for sure. But I think though that like the flavor of a lot of these movies, especially like these, specifically these Taika ones I'm mentioning, has a lot to do with like, him coming along, and I can see a timeline of like, man, 1 and 2, Thor 1 and 2 were just bone dry
They
and
sure were.
joyless. Let's fucking crank that up, you know. And then they do that, and like I
Cranked
don't.
it too hard, brother.
Yeah, and again, knowing like how what his flavor is like with some of the other stuff he's worked on, you can feel a lot of his identity in the way these movies come together. So I don't know that like, it's like the bottom line is still going to be Feige and the MCU overlord collective, but I think if the creators and the people that are writing these stories and directing them and showrunning, etc., like want to shake things up more, that could be good in the long run. Especially if you don't want like everyone just collectively zoning out like on something that was like, there were good ideas here, but the fatigue is just too unavoidable at this point. The fatigue on Ubi games, on Assassin's Creed, all that stuff. Now it's like industry wide. We were talking about it like years ago because whatever, we're fucking playing games and all that shit. But like it's starting to, on a casual level, people that barely tune in, people like a cousin of mine would be like, oh yeah, okay, Assassin's Creed, right? I don't know, man. They still make those. There's a little bit of that out there.
It's funny because the Marvel movie thing, when did Iron Man come out? Like 2008? Like 15 years? Let's say 15 years.
I forget. Yeah.
In that 15 years, they have like speed ran the problem that like video games have encountered in like multiple ways. Like I remember going through Mass Effect and getting to the point where I'm like, bro, I have saved the world in an RPG like 400 times since I was a child. I want to go get beers with Garrus. That's the game that I want to play now, right? And now with Marvel, I'm like, God damn it! Like Ant-Man can't save the world from the quantum realm. Is the fucking Earth just on the precipice of doom every fucking 2 weeks?
The first,
like, really, is it?
The first time I went off on this was fucking Spider-Man 2, man. Just like, Doc Ock was a great villain. He was a great character. He was a lot of fun, and for no reason, at the buzzer, we got to threaten the world. And it was just like
make a little baby son.
Like your stupid fucking crank up of the stakes actually made this whole thing worse. If it stayed on the level it was at, which was a very interpersonal story, you would have like ended on that level of an interpersonal story with Doc Ock. It would have been fucking perfect, but that was the first major one I remember bothering the shit out of me, was like the stupid ramp up in stakes, from 2.
They're also combining that with, like you mentioned, the open world fatigue, and it's really funny because I think it was Chris Wolfhart on Twitter, formerly at Mr. Fields, who made, I think it was him anyway, I'm not sure, but was joking that like the open world trend would have been dead long ago, but every couple of years some fucking absolute A+ amazing thing comes out that's open world that sells a shit million copies. Like Ubisoft is like, they have wrung every piece of blood out of the stone that is their open world formula, right? But then Elden Ring came out, and Elden Ring sold 1 billion copies because it's open world. No, it's because it's good.
It's also because that open world sprinkle is being inserted into a series of very solid Souls games that came before this, and people already liked that. Elden Ring could have continued that, but
and before that it was Breath of the Wild. Oh, it succeeded because it's an open world Zelda game. No, it succeeded because it's great.
Yeah. No, they
and
introduced
Witcher 3 before that, and so on and so forth.
the like open world was introduced to an already working formula in those examples.
Do you remember do you remember back when like people liked Kevin Smith and he had only made a couple movies that were pretty good, where he pitched his idea for the Green Hornet film? And the Green Hornet film was Green Hornet and Kato sitting on the fucking hood of the car talking about bullshit for 90 minutes. And then they go fight some dudes off camera.
And then come back to the frame. Yeah,
and then they come back in to sit on the hood. Like, I would be so much more interested in that Marvel movie right now.
Of course. Everyone would. But, like, you know, that would be also something for that would just be like, okay, are we gonna take the risk on that, or is anyone gonna get it? You know, yada yada,
Can we get
etc.
a fucking movie about what's his name, Bob from Hydra,
right?
That
or
fucking
whatever. Yeah. All that shit.
Dealing with his fucking healthcare problems with Hydra.
But this is what I mean, right? Like, let's start taking chances and not just like taking half chances where you go WandaVision and then back into the formula. You know, let's start completely removing the formula, because it can and you know it can work if you fucking if we are interested in seeing superheroes through different lenses entirely. We want to see them through the whole journey that way, not just so that they can eventually come back to a quick last minute superhero punch battle. You know.
I also think that I mean, this has been an issue in comics and video games for a while, but like I don't think the mainstream movie public has had this particular issue, which is you can only escalate the stakes so high before it stops becoming like tangible or relatable to a normal human being. You can understand the Earth exploding. You can understand there's aliens out there and billions of people will die or trillions of people will die. It is difficult to tangibly interpret every permutation of a trillion billion multiverses. It's like it's now become you can't touch it. It can't.
Marvel is also having this issue where every individual series has its individual MacGuffin, and and this is like comics as well, but it's like these individual MacGuffins coexist in a hierarchy that is completely like, okay, so if this grants a wish, but this also makes you do anything, and this lets you do anything, and this could let you do it, like which one of these lets you do anything devices would let you actually do anything?
Guess what? They're all pieces of the big let you do anything device.
Okay, well, we got to keep the bad guy away from that.
And I don't know, it just seems like a weird thing now where like I'm sitting here and like, okay, the multiverse is the new thing, and the multiverse is the new thing, so that when I'm a 55-year-old man, you can fucking wheel out Hugh Jackman in a fucking wheelchair and go, I'm Wolverine, Cap. And it's like I can't. The idea that I could be excited for the plan 10 years from now I can't.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting because like as we're talking about this, right? I look over to my right and I have my shelf of comics right here, and I'm looking at them, and I have a collection of Marvel stuff on one side over here. I've got some DC over here on the other side, and you know. I mean, shit, I've got some fucking Vertigo, some cross-gen. I've just got a whole pile of these things. And they kind of represent... And I've gotten rid of stuff over the years, too. I used to have a lot of, you know, loose issues, not that I don't anymore. But the point is like, I'm looking at these as, like, the eras when I used to go and buy a lot of graphic novels. And there was things that brought me back in. And when I was going on a regular basis and keeping up with it. And then I'd fade out, and then something would be like, oh, that's an interesting thing. And I'd get pulled in for a little bit and then back out, etc. I'm now out because I haven't bought a graphic novel or a comic in a very long time. The last thing I probably bought before Saga or after Saga, I don't know. Oh yeah, I bought Sarah, this Ennis book that like I hear is really good or whatever. But But like the point is what's happening with these movies and me coming out. It's the exact same thing, right? Like there's a point where none of these things that I bought, these were all very satisfying, good stories. I really enjoyed them. There was nothing wrong with them, but as good as they were, there was a certain point where my interest just the taste is a little more bland each time, unfortunately, you know? And you kind of catch, when a friend would loan me something every once in a while that's like, yo, check this out. This is wild. This is a completely different take on something or, whatever. But the movies that are getting to that same place I got to where I stopped buying comics and I'm like, I didn't stop buying because, I wasn't enjoying what I bought, but it just like, it stopped being something I was compelled to go check out, and it's the same level of like fatigue kicking in at some point.
There's also something else to be said, and I mean, the quality's all over the place, so it's not quite the same. But it's like there's a video that I can't stop talking about by Race Vic. Are you familiar with Race Vic?
I know the spelling of the name. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So he does like video essays, right? Mm-hmm. And I was not aware of this. He is a fiend for racing games. He has like the fucking cockpit in his house, right? That kind of, with the chair and the pedals and everything. And he made a fantastic video this week, which is called "I Love Racing Games, They Suck." Mm-hmm. And he goes into F1, Assetto Corsa, and all the sim racers and just shows off like these are all wildly busted. And they have been wildly busted for like going on 8 to 10 years. And this is a better problem than arcade racing games have, in which arcade racing games just no longer exist at all.
Right. Yeah.
And just goes on to like, people love racing games, but there's just been no creativity, and they're just bad. The racing games coming out now are objectively worse than the same series 10 years ago. Right? And I feel like there's a portion of that happening right now, which is how many Spider-Mans do you need to release before you realize it's not going to be as good as Spider-Man 1 or 2 ever? How many Thor movies are you going to run out that people aren't like, or Iron Man's or Captain America? How many Captain America movies are you going to put out before you just go back to Winter Soldier?
How many racing games are trying out new shit versus the ones that are just
literally none?
Yeah, versus the ones that are just like doing the old tried and true and just trying to keep it, at the par level of what's been acceptable years before, aka the sports franchise ification of another genre.
Yeah, and in terms of video games, it's like I'm thinking about it. I'm like, it happened to sports games, then it happened to racing games, and now it's happened to shooters. Like Call of Duty and Battlefield are sports games. Just the sport is murder.
Solved genres.
They come out and they have the same regular boxes and the same guns and the same basic features every year, and they're kind of getting worse. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that's probably starting to happen with the Marvel movies. And like, it's tough to say as I haven't seen these, but I'm just talking about people's
perception, of being on the
feeling,
the people that are in there buying them, for sure. And yeah, so what's the common denominator across all of this? It's like, take chances. Like, you got to start taking more chances once people.
No. Okay,
well, never mind. Don't. Change my mind. Yeah, that's it. And I do hope for that. I do hope that we continue to just like, at this pace, I feel you're gonna get, a bunch of them come and go, and then like one random MCU thing is gonna be like, oh, did you hear about this? Fucking Puss in Boots 2? Whoa, But then you go and then just go back to sleep, and then every once in a while, real shit. Because, yeah. Well, anyways, that's kind of the vibe I got from it. So,
I mean, I just saw somebody make a really excellent comment, right? So Marvel stuff is right now, it's about the multiverse, right? Like the last 4 Spider-Man movies have been about the multiverse. I'm including the next Spider-Verse one. You got Miles, You got fucking not home. What's it called? No Way Home.
Hmm.
And then Far From Home said it was about the multiverse, but that was a trick. Like, like, how many fucking times are you
Hmm.
doing the same
You know what's
exact fucking thing?
here's another metric. Go to the conversations we have about these movies, and what percentage of them are talking about the movie versus the fatigue. And
Oh
now,
yeah.
now the fatigue is 80% of the conversation. The movie's 20% of it.
I would rather have more Morbiuses than than another one of these in which at the end the everybody team up to fight the big man.
Hmm. I'm looking forward to Spider-Verse 2. I'll probably enjoy it. It'll probably be a lot of fun. It'll probably have a bunch of great, little moments and funny bits and pieces. But yeah, the desire to watch the Green Hornet walk off frame and then come back and sit down is just
And have
it's
no action.
yeah, just a way more interesting pitch
I would
in
just
that.
live for watching. I would just like to sit outside the theater in a nice chair and just watch people watch massive fucking nerds just walk out super mad.
So this is that there's a part of it that I was thinking of, and I was like, we don't need to go there. But I was also thinking of the
Yeah,
people
it's fun,
that,
though.
okay, fine. Well, the people that definitely are like, this is blasphemous, this is bullshit, this is not what it should be. When I go to see a blank movie, I go so I can and then you kind of like, right, the person that actually would have no problem with the formula staying tried and true forever,
It's like, congrats, you're advocating for the same thought processes that led to your entire favorite medium being referred to as cape shit
Cape
by
shit.
other comics enjoyers and becoming one of the most niche things ever.
Yeah.
Like-
There, I do think that, like, for example, movies can come out that are like, we talked, like, remember the Batman just came out, right? The Pattinson Batman, and
Yeah.
that was like, oh yeah, there you go, there's a little good Batman movie. But like, how many of those before you're like, well, yeah, I know, we've done this, nothing wrong with it, nothing happened, like, everyone did their job. This take on Killer Croc was awesome. What an amazing, man bat. Wow at that.
Are you telling me Man Bats in the fucking Robert Pattinson Batman?
I mean, let's just grab one that we haven't seen yet,
Oh,
right?
okay, shit. Okay, whew.
Yeah, let's grab a Batman Rogue Gallery villain we haven't seen yet, and just like, yo, that interpretation of Man Bat, holy shit, right?
Yeah. This
And then, but it's still gonna kind of come out and be like, well, yeah, that still, we've done it. It was cool. We've done it.
I think that, first of all, Peacemaker was great. So James Gunn, you just keep doing those.
I gotta watch that too. Yeah.
Oh, it's fantastic. Great secondary villain. One of the best secondary villains ever. I forgot what I was gonna say. Fuck, it's completely gone.
Okay. Well, anyways, sure. Calendar Man, whatever kind of Clayface, whatever you want to bring up. The point is that we're gonna, you can get a really good movie that is gonna have like a fun take on that villain that you've never seen before, and you'll be like, yeah, I was entertained by that. But I guess it's just kind of like, I don't know that you're gonna have any sort of like, holy shit. Even if you get a holy shit Heath Ledger kind of moment out of it,
Yeah.
It's still echoing the impact of before. It's the wake, of in the water.
You saw the new Batman, right, with Robert Pattinson? Did they show Martha's fucking pearls hitting the fucking ground?
I don't think they did. I don't think they did.
Ooh.
It's been a minute now, and my memory's not great, but I don't think they did. So, yeah.
Restraint.
Yes. No, if they ever, like, origin stories, people are gonna rage angrily at having to watch an origin story again. I know I fucking would. And I've heard enough people fucking upset about that. Like, don't need to do it.
I feel like that is the absolute, like, canary in the coal mine,
Mm-hmm.
where there have been so many Spider-Mans and Batmans and such that we're at the point where the character shows up and you go, yeah, their backstory happened. Moving on. Don't have time. Everyone will be mad because we're doing the same fucking thing again.
Like that's a
Like, when
and
Logan shows up in fucking the multiverse, when Hugh Jackman fucking trots on stage and he's 95 years old and 300 years to hang out with Robert Downey Jr. Skeleton. Do you think they're even gonna bother saying the fucking phrase Weapon X, or he'll just be like, yeah, I'm Logan, I'm part of the X-Men, you know who I am, and then he will floss off the stage.
I think fortunately they've wisened up to how sick of origin stories people are. And every time you recast anybody, you gotta briefly at least touch on it in some way, shape, or form. But no, they've gotten better about that, and I don't think the pearls didn't hit the ground.
Oh, thank goodness.